So an increasingly desperate situation unfolding there in Europe, as we've seen. And joining me now, the former U.S. ambassador to Syria and to Israel, Edward Djerejian. He's currently the director of the Baker Institute at Rice University in Houston. And many of these immigrants that we are seeing, these refugees, are fleeing violence from Syria since that civil war began there more than 4 years ago. So could the international community have taken action long before now to try to have this evolve into a full-blown crisis? Prevent that, rather. Can you hear me, sir?
Well, I believe, Martin, yes, I believe the response to your question is yes. I think what we're seeing is a failure of world leadership in resolving the critical crisis in Syria that has now spread to Iraq with ISIS. It's been now 4 years, as you stated, that the Syrian conflict has taken over 280,000 lives. Almost half of the refugees that you referred to in Europe, there are about 320,000. Approximately half of those are Syrians escaping the war. You showed this iconic photo of the young boy that's captured the imagination of the world, but I also noted a statement by a 13-year-old Syrian boy in Europe who was migrating there with his family, and he said, we don't want really to go to Europe, we want to go back to our home in Syria, but please stop the war in Syria so we can go back. So the real solution is to resolve these conflicts in Syria and Iraq in order to stem the origin of this exodus. Of course, there are other refugees from Afghanistan, from Somalia and Eritrea, but it's the real crisis in the Near East that is the cause of this, what we're seeing in Europe.
I don't think the United States, especially the public, is too desirous of wanting to get involved militarily into Syria any more than they already are. So I'm wondering, is the other answer then for more countries like the U.S. to step forward and say, we will take these migrants in, come here?
Well, the United States has a policy of receiving approximately, I think, 70,000 or 75,000 migrants, refugees per year. As you know, some senators have put forward a proposal to increase our intake of some 65,000 refugees from Syria, but it's limited. The entry levels of refugees into the United States has structurally been limited to that type of number.
And so where does this go? I mean, do you just see this problem exacerbating now as more countries say, well, you can come to us? That will encourage more people to leave the refugee camps along the border there in Jordan and elsewhere. It seems like this is only going to get worse.
No, now, looking at it again structurally, the Europeans have welcomed migrant laborers because they need labor. The demographics of population growth in Europe are declining, and so a country, especially like Germany, does need labor. So they've had this tradition, if you will, of welcoming laborers for economic reasons. But now with these political crises in the Middle East, it has become a humanitarian crisis. I don't see it ending in the near term. When you look at the number of Syrian refugees in Turkey, almost 2 million. In Lebanon, over 1 million, almost a third of the population of Lebanon, and in Jordan, about 700,000. Those refugees also are going to be seeking, some of them, exit into Europe and elsewhere. So unless there is a solution to the horrible conflicts that we're witnessing in Syria and Iraq, and the rise of ISIS and the instability in these countries, and failed leadership. I mean, when you really get down to the source of it, it's the failed leadership of these governments in the Arab countries that have not provided the basic and security and economic growth for their people, that have caused extremist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda to cause havoc in these countries. Mm-hmm. Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, he fired on his own people and virtually ignited the civil war there. So conflict resolution is the structural solution, but in between that, Farbridge, the community, the international community has to come together and coordinate on refugee relief.
Ambassador Djerejian, thank you very much for your insights. We hope they do come together, and love to see an end to that conflict. Thank you.